Good morning, everybody. And by everybody, I mean Facebook and Instagram. Good to have everybody back in the same room. Technical problems fixed. Thank you, as always, to our technical guru, Michael. I hope everybody's good. If you're in Calgary, I hope you're great. They fixed the weather. Today, we might see some showers, and then it's sun for the rest of the week. 20 degrees. Overnight highs of 8 degrees. We're getting close to that time where we can start getting annuals and tomatoes and even trees out, and we can start planting things and we can start having fun. So keep an eye on the temperatures. Keep an eye on what you need to, and we're going to be ready for fun planting. So this week we're discussing everything tree related. Yesterday, we kind of touched on what was a tree, encompassing everything tree and shrubs and all of that good stuff. And I thought we'd continue with that today because trees are one of those subjects where there's a lot to learn, and it's a never-ending study. I know a guy personally, and he's somewhat of a tree expert. And he is constantly learning. This guy has forgotten more about trees than I'll ever know. And yet every single time he's learning something new, making new discoveries, figuring out new ways. It wasn't too long ago, I'm talking maybe 20 years, where if you pruned and you pruned correctly, you are still told to paint the end of the cut. We now know that that is actually detrimental. I remember, again, going back maybe 20 years, people would pour concrete into trees, into cracks and splits and whatnot to stabilize them. Well, concrete is extremely corrosive. Imagine getting a cut and then pouring concrete in it. You're not allowing anything to heal naturally. You're not allowing your body to release any kind of, natural hormones to the area. Anything to kind of make that wound better. You're going to end up with a higher chance of infection because you're bringing in an outside source that isn't guaranteed clean. But at the time, that was accepted. That was the principle. So there's a lot to know about trees, and we don't have a ton of time. You guys get us to 10,000 followers, then I can stand up here for an hour and just go on and on and on. Not that I have the time to do that either, but we have 15 minutes. So I thought what we would talk about today are the two main classifications of trees and the pros and cons of why we like them. So I randomly grabbed a couple of trees from Tree Lot. Tree buddies, I'm a tree hugger and they're hugging me back. And essentially what they are, this one is good though. So this one, they took my tagline. It's a mountain pine, but as you can see, I look good all year. Same mountain pine, same. But essentially, I honestly wanted to grab a conifer and a deciduous. So I grabbed a caragana or a weeping pea, and I grabbed a pine or a pinus. And that's what I'm going to talk about. What didn't really matter. I could have grabbed an apple tree and a juniper. It would have been the same thing. So a deciduous tree, all that simply means is that it drops its leaves at maturity, at dormancy, whatever. So as this tree gets to the end of the season, it starts going dormant, there's less light, it's getting colder, roots are freezing, it's reached its maturity for that year, it's grown all it's going to grow, nothing else is going to happen. Well, now its leaves are going to shed, okay? Much like, if you want to equate it to a mammal, a deer with its antlers. The end of the year, the antlers come off, they come back in the spring, same kind of thing. So the tree is dormant, no chance of growth. Now conifers, which simply means cone bearing, and I grabbed this one specifically. It's not much to look at, but it's kind of cute. You can see right here, there's a little baby cone, a little baby cone. And a conifer does not drop its needles. It retains those needles, but it goes dormant. So there's nothing happening. There's no photosynthesis. The roots are frozen. All the sap is frozen. The tree is in complete dormancy, but it doesn't drop its leaves. So those are essentially the two differences. And then, as you can see, this one has one tiny cone, and now this one has flowers. That's the other primary difference, is that, and again, there are exceptions to the rule. There is a larch, and again, I always talk about larches. One, they're a fascinating tree. This guy's spiky. When I'm manipulating him, I feel him, he prickles me. Doesn't really bother me anymore. If you're gonna deal with one, or you're gonna plant bigger ones, I recommend long sleeves and gloves. Kind of do as I say, not as I do. I don't wear them, but you can get juniper rash or pine rash from planting them, so just be careful with that. Lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, the larch. So I talk about larch a lot. They're magnificent trees. They look spiky, but the needles are so incredibly soft. They're like feathers. And they are a deciduous conifer. So they're the blend of the two. So at the end of the year, their needles go a phenomenal yellow and they shed them. Now, we get a ton of people every year that aren't sure what a larch is. They move into a house that has a larch and they get a hold of us and they go, oh my gosh, I think my pine tree is sick. It's turning yellow. 99% of the time, it's a larch. 1% of the time, they may have a sick pine tree or spruce tree or something. But the vast majority of the time, it's a larch. So there are differences, absolutely. But because of time, we're talking broad strokes. So these trees put out a flower. And as you guys may know, I've touched on it before when we spoke about annuals, perennials, and even trees when we've discussed fruit trees or fruit shrubs, raspberries, apples, that kind of thing. That this requires a pollinator. So I think you guys all remember the stamen and the pistil and that the little bumble butts. We did a poll. You guys like bumble butts the best, so I will reference them. The little bumble butts come along and they gather up the pollen and then they fly off to another one. But as they're gathering the pollen, they're leaving pollen behind at the same time. And they're causing these to go to fruit. And all that means is that this is a Siberian pea. And a lot of you have probably seen them if you didn't know the name. So again, it's a Caragana or a Siberian pea. And it puts out essentially a pea pod that has seeds inside. Now that's a fruit. And that's how it propagates through that seed. Now, if any of you ever put pine nuts in your salad, they come from the pine tree and they come from the cone. Now, the vast majority of conifers, and again, I'm talking pines, I am talking larch, spruce trees, they put out a cone. Now, the cone is not considered a flower. It's considered a gymnosperm, okay? And in Greece, if you break that down, that simply means a naked flower. So there's no flower, which means there's nothing to attract a pollinator. Pollinator doesn't go there. Pollinators literally see this. The color stands out in their weird little hexy eyes. Like, hey, I'm a little pollinator guy. That was my impression of a bee, by the way. And these flowers stand out wickedly bright on the spectrum. And that's what pulls them in. Well, this doesn't have it. As we all know, those pine cones just go brown. And a lot of conifers, the vast majority, have both male and female cones on them. The female cones tend to be bigger, male cones tend to be smaller. So when you see a tree covered in cones, a lot of time people think, oh, the big cones are more mature, the little cones aren't. Much like you'll see flowers. You might see a flower fully open, like this guy, and then another one just about to open, like that. Okay? And people make that same assumption on the cones. They believe that one cone is bigger because it's more mature, it opens sooner, whatever the case may be. And the other cone is smaller because it's just opened, it's younger. Now that may indeed be the case. Things happen at different times in nature, we know that. But for the vast majority of the time, when you're looking at a conifer, at a cone tree, an evergreen, whatever you want to call it, and you're looking at that tree in, say, August, and you're seeing different size cones, it's male and female. Now, they don't attract a pollinator. So I don't know if you've ever done this experiment where you take a pine cone and you throw it in water. Well, what happens is it closes up and it goes really tight. Then you put it out in the sun and the wind and it dries out and it opens up. I feel like I'm doing yoga. I'm doing pine cone yoga. Is that a yoga move, the pine cone? If not, I'm going to develop it. Come tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. We'll do yoga with the trees. I'm just kidding. I honestly have never done yoga. I think I've done it once.
That's a cool idea, though. Tree pose.
I bet you people would go in. Exactly. I lost my train of thought. Oh, right. So you see them. They tighten up in water and they open up when it's dry. Now, that's because when they're hanging out on the end of a tree, the pollen is inside the male cone and the seed is inside the female cone. Now, this tree is covered in both male and female. Well, if the rain lashes down, gets into the pine cone, it washes out the pollen, dilutes it, it runs out, and it doesn't get to the other ones. When they open up, it's because it's warm and windy. The wind then blows that nice, dry, powdery pollen to the female cone, and the seed develops. So that's why you see pine cones closed and pine cones open. It's simply to spread the pollinator. The pollen. These guys do not work by pollinators. They work primarily by the wind. Now, the wind can also do these, but a lot of times on flowers, the pollen is sticky. That's why you see bumblebuds covered in it, and they need to go to each one to take some pollen and leave some behind. So that's the primary scientific. I thought I was going to have enough time to get into aesthetics, but I don't. And that's the Cole's notes. But that's kind of the scientific difference between a conifer and a deciduous tree. So maybe tomorrow we'll pick up where we left off and we'll discuss more about aesthetic value, what each one could bring, why you want to look at certain trees in certain spots for your yard, and we'll continue with trees. And the best thing about that, I don't have to clean off my chalkboard. I can be incredibly lazy. Laziness win. So, and also stay tuned tomorrow because we will be doing more yoga poses. Ready? Tree roots, canopy, pine cone. See, I'll get there. I'm going to start a new form of yoga. What? Bumblebutt. That one's on Brandy, not me. So thank you everybody for being here. It's a beautiful Tuesday. Enjoy. Hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into trees. And we're just going to keep powering through trees this week. Enjoy the weather. It's t-shirt weather tomorrow. So we'll see you guys then. Bye, everyone.